Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Unfucking Your CX. Of course, you know me, the host, Zack Hamilton, but quite frankly, none of you keep coming back for me. You're curious about who is in the hot seat with one of their topics that just makes them cringe the most and their actionable player tips. I am so excited. We got Dan Gingiss in the hot seat today. Dan, welcome to the show.
What's up, Zach? So excited to be here. Such a different show format and really excited to get into it with you.
Yeah, really excited for you. It's really interesting. I think you and I have been linked in for a while, been following your stuff. You always have, you know, a ton of valuable content that's not just about here's what you could do, but it's very much here's how to do it and here's how to really drive results. And that's what I admire so much about you. So set the scene for us. Where are we having this conversation? In a coffee shop, a pub, restaurant, maybe we're on a walk. Where's your favorite place to talk shop?
You know, all of those are good. I love coffee. I certainly am always happy to chat someone up in a bar. But as the weather has gotten nice, I really appreciate being out on a walk. My grandmother used to have this saying that she called it airing your brains out. And I always remember that because I try to do it almost every day where I just get outside, get the fresh air, and it makes all the difference. So I think if I had to choose, I'm going to choose a walk.
I love that. I'm going to have to use your grandmother's phrase of airing your brains out because, like probably many others during COVID, I used to, with my team, do what we called walk and talks. So let's disconnect from the screens. If there was something that you needed reviewed or shared, send it over the day before. But let's both spend that time outside. Not, I didn't call it airing our brains out, but I love that term.
Yeah, if I can take anytime I can take a call, not on Zoom, but I can do a phone call, I'll just put on the AirPods and go for a walk, and I love that. And I think it can be more productive. Certainly a walk in person is the best because when you're walking side by side with somebody, there's just I guess an intimacy there that leads to better connection and I think better work discussion as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, right? Because we're not distracted by our devices, whether it's a laptop, a phone sitting in front of us, and we can really just connect. And to me, that's especially when you're thinking about these conversations that could potentially be challenging, right? Where it's disrupting the status quo, where you're thinking about, do I have a change in strategy or am I driving change? And so, Dan, when you think about CX, I really believe one of the most important roles for us is we are change makers, right? We are the influencers of change within our organizations. And you've worked with so many companies around the world. What's one of those topics that you get asked about when it comes to customer experience or just experience in general that makes you cringe the most?
I'd say broadly, the thing that makes me cringe the most is when companies do things to their customers that they themselves wouldn't like having done to them. Right? It goes back to that old golden rule that we learned in grade school. But it's amazing how often it happens. I remember when I first started at one of my companies, I was overseeing the website. And first thing I noticed is that when you logged in, there was a pop-up that came up and it was a cross sell, right? And I was like, man, I hate pop-ups. Doesn't everybody hate pop-ups? Raise your hand if you don't hate pop-ups, right? Everyone hates them. And so I went to the marketing team and I'm like, why are we doing this? And they said, well, it's our best performing ad. I said, really? Well, tell me about that. And they said, well, we get a 7% click-through rate and normally we only get like 2 or 3%. All right, yeah, that's pretty good. Have you considered for a moment that we're pissing off 93% of our customers in order to get that 7% conversion rate? And they're like, so I'm like, get rid of this thing. We can figure out how to cross-sell people in a different way that's not annoying 93% of our customers. So that's what irritates me is it's this customer experience stuff. I like to tell people you don't need an advanced degree. You don't need to be, brilliant. You just have to understand what customers want. And as consumers, we all have that knowledge in our head because we are consumers in our lives and we know what we like and what we don't like. And yet so many companies still do this stuff to customers, even though they know people hate it.
Yeah, but you know what's so interesting about this, Dan? It's such a brilliant example. Even at my time when we first started to turn errands from the website into a fully functional. You can rent to own online. Of course, everyone had an opinion about what that digital experience should look like. And I finally had to do the same thing. I had to raise my hand and say, when was the last time you rented merchandise from Aaron's? When were you ever one of our customers? And our exec team was like, I've never done it. And I'm like, then why are you making decisions for our customers? Why don't we ask our customers how they want to make their decisions? And I think that's part of the challenge is when was the last time any executive leader walked in their customer shoes?
It is so rare. And when I see it, I always try to celebrate it. You know, I had the pleasure of speaking at the Taco Bell franchise convention last year, and their CEO, Sean, got up and spoke before me. And he told a long story and showed a video of him spending time in Taco Bell restaurants, literally learning every single job. And he told this story that his first day, he showed up and they knew who he was. This wasn't like undercover, I forget what that show was called, but it wasn't that. They knew that it was him. But he said on his first day, he showed up and his boss handed him a mop and told him to go clean the bathroom. And this guy eventually, did the drive-through and he learned how to make the tacos. And in fact, during one of the videos, all the audience started laughing. And I was like, he must not be making the tacos right. He must be doing something wrong. I don't know what he's doing wrong. But anyway, I had so much appreciation for him because I don't know how you run a company like that without having a really good idea of what your employees go through every day and without having stood on the front lines talking to customers. And so I think we need that out of more undercover boss. I don't know why that just came to me.
Yeah.
Not a hard word to remember, but we need more executives who are willing to do that. At one company I worked for, the executive had a special phone number that he could call so that he could bypass customer service and the IVR and get right to a supervisor. And I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because he should sit in line like everybody else, because you know what that's going to do? It's going to piss him off and then he's going to fix it. But instead, he's got a special phone number. He's got the red phone on his desk that can go straight to a supervisor. Makes no sense at all.
Yeah, I love these just sheer examples of not just what it looks great, like the great example from Taco Bell, right? Where he's actually in there with his employees. And that drives empathy for what they do every single day when it comes to serving customers, but also kind of the red phone and give me a special customer journey. So when we think about this, Dan, let's start with your player tips. What's the first player tip to really unfuck this, making decisions without really living in your customer's shoes?
Well, you said it. My first tip is become a customer of your own business. And whatever that means for you, right? In Taco Bell, it might be easier. Just walk into a Taco Bell and order some tacos, right? That's a pretty simple thing to do. But maybe you work in a B2B company and you sell heavy equipment or you sell SaaS technology or whatever it is, and it's a little bit more difficult. I still want you to do the best that you can to go through the steps you make your customers go through. So if you're a SaaS company, set up your own account and go through that process. Watch the training videos and see if they're actually helpful. Forget your password, because no one yet has created a good forgotten password process. Go through and try to break things and experience them as a customer. If you absolutely can't do any of that, then shadow a real customer. Stand next to them, like literally physically next to them, while they sign up for an account or while they do whatever it is that you're asking them to do, so that you can see what they're going through.
That is one, I think that's one of the most powerful things. Or have a spouse do it, right? Have your spouse go through it and see what their lived experience is. So love that first player tip. What's the second one?
The second one is I'm gonna split it into two to cheat a little bit. So it's gonna be the second and the third. So the second one is to listen to your customers. And what I mean by that is I want you to hear the actual voice of your customer. I don't want you just reading reports. I don't want you asking only quantitative questions so you can get to an NPS score, because that NPS score tells you how you're doing at a moment in time, but it doesn't tell you why. And so I've seen countless times where companies, when the NPS goes up, they're all patting each other on the back. Hey, great job, fist bump, we're awesome. And when it goes down, they're blaming the weather, or they're blaming the economy or COVID or just something, because the truth is we have no idea why it went down. And so stop with all of the quantitative analysis and start actually getting the real words from your customers. And yes, you can read them in print, but it's even better to hear them. So one of the things I love doing is sitting in a call center and whijacking with an agent and listening to live calls, because you start to hear emotion, you start to hear the meat on the bones, right? In terms of what is the actual problem that your customer has.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of John Legere when he was leading T-Mobile, and that's how they really came up with, the uncarrier strategy where he was listening in on calls. I think it was for an hour every evening. It could have been a little bit longer, but I listened to an interview of his once on a podcast, and he said that exact same thing. He said, "Look, I don't just want to report of the negative frictions that our customers are experiencing with the business. I want to hear their emotion, because their emotion is what's going to drive, are they a raving fan of T-Mobile or not?" And so ultimately, that's why he decided to listen to those calls, is because he wanted to hear the emotion behind the friction.
Yeah. Great, and it's a great example too. They were also very early adopters of customer service in social media, which was the topic of my very first book back in 2017. They were out there really early on, engaging with customers, wanting to hear from them, and being really responsive. And I think that's why people like the brand so much in an industry that most people don't really like.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the third player tip?
All right, so the third tip, I have this little. I love acronyms because people can remember them better. And so when we talk about customer feedback, the acronym I like to use is CAT, like meow. And CAT stands for collect, analyze, take action. And most companies do collect and analyze really well, and they just never get to the take action part. So if you are a company where you think that the end result of customer feedback is a report, you are missing the boat, right? Your CEO does not need another report on his or her desk. What we need to do is take action on this feedback. And so what does that look like? Well, to me, I always apply the simple start, stop, continue mechanism, right? So let's listen to our customers and start doing what they're asking us to do that we're not doing now. Stop doing what they are telling us is pissing them off, and continue doing what they're telling us they love. And I'll tell you, that third one is just as important, because we're so focused on complaints. I've also worked with so many companies where the leadership only gets a complaint report. Don't do that. You should also get a compliment report, right? Because the stuff that you're doing well, we want to double down on. We want to continue to do. And sometimes we don't know what it is that makes people love us. But when we figure that out, we should be investing more in that and empowering our employees more to deliver that. So if you can take action by starting, stopping, and continuing, even just 2 or 3 things, you're going to make so much progress on your CX, and with very little investment.
Yeah, I'm so with you, right? We had to shift the mindset at Aaron's when I was there leading CX in our team, where we just report out on the actions taken as an organization. So we stopped reporting out on NPS score. We reported out on, here are the actions that we took based off of the insights that we received. And some of them were, hey, we're testing a specific new store concept in 100 stores. We're receiving a lot of positive feedback. It's working. We're connecting the dots. We're seeing, average ticket sizes increase. We're seeing month over month, same store sales are growing. So that was one of those actions of, let's scale it. But there's so many companies out there, Dan, that take no action. Why is it so hard? Why can companies not get out of their own way and make the decision to act?
Zach, I'm going to turn this question around into a different question, because it's going to answer the question. I love to ask the question of any business person: what is the most valuable asset of your company? And if they don't answer our customers, they're wrong. Period. There is only one answer to that question. Now, second most valuable is going to be your employees. But your most valuable asset, the one thing you cannot do without, is your customers. If we
Yeah.
do not have customers, we do not have a business. And so The answer to your question is I don't know. I don't know why it isn't prioritized number one above everything else. And so the way to, I think, solve this is that customer experience, we got to stop looking at it as a project, as
Mm.
something that we do, that we have to invest in a time boxed project that's going to cost us X million dollars and is going to take us 6 months. And, companies look at it like it's a IT project, right? And then it gets compared against and prioritized against other IT projects. That's not the way to look at customer experience. What we should be looking at is how do we empower every single one of our employees to be customer centric, whether or not they ever even talk to a customer. So if you're a guy that works in the finance department and you're in the back office, you never speak to customers. I guarantee you're making decisions every day that impact customers. The question is, are you thinking about it in that way, right? And if you're not, then what you're doing is, like, I always imagine there was some kid in the at one of the major airlines back in, I think it was 2002, where they made a major change, which was for the first time in 50 years, they started charging people to check bags. And for 50 years, people did it for free. And now all of a sudden, it's a revenue generator. What's the problem with that? Well, customers didn't get any additional value. They just got a cost added on with no value. And then you wonder why people hate the airlines. It's because every decision they make is just like that, right? They got some guy in the back that's like, it's a number cruncher trying to figure out how to make more money on the backs of the customer, instead of saying, how do we make the experience better so not only more customers come, but they stay, they spend longer, they stay longer, they spend more, and they tell others about us. And that same finance guy, if he's thinking about it that way, is going to grow the business in the same way, but with the customer instead of on the backs of the customer.
Yeah, spot on there. I couldn't have said it any better. Dan, I really appreciate you coming to the hot seat. I know a lot of our listeners, one, are raving fans of yours, but two, they may want to reach out and go in deeper with you. Where can they find you? How can they connect with you?
Best place is dangingiss.com, and my spelling is right down there. I can see my name there, so that'll give it to you. But dangingiss.com. I'm also very active on LinkedIn, as I know you are as well. But definitely reach out. Love hearing from all sorts of organizations. I work across almost every industry you can imagine. Just for fun, by the way, the day before the Taco Bell convention, I spoke at the Fluid Power Distributors Association. And so, literally, when I say pretty much every industry, and the thing that struck me the most is how similar their challenges were. So, happy to talk to you if you too are having challenges.
Very cool, Dan. Well, again, thank you. Don't be a stranger. Come back with another topic. We'd love to have you on. Cheers, bud.
All right. Thanks, Zach.